Welcome to another episode of Buyouts, Business, and Bourbon. Our special guest today, I am not sure he's a bourbon drinker. We'll find out a little later, but we have a special guest today. He's been a very close friend of mine for over 40 years. We went to Binghamton together. We're roommates, and he has built a business from scratch that we're going to hear a little bit more about today. His name is Dave Bolotsky. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you, Jerry. Good to be here.
I'm glad you're here, and I know you have quite a story to tell. You've had a career on Wall Street, an accomplished institutional invested, ranked research analyst at Goldman Sachs, and has moved on to successfully start and grow a business that we'll talk about. Dave, your entrepreneurship really began with managing the record store at SUNY Binghamton, did it not? Oh, by the way, we have to get this out of the way early, as I am wearing our Binghamton t-shirt.
Very nice. Very nice. Yes. And hopefully this will be more successful than the last time we broadcast together on our college radio station.
Yes, and luckily that wasn't recorded because that was not a very good outcome.
So my entrepreneurship journey, I would say, actually probably started when I was 10 or 11 years old, and I made a paper catalog of baseball cards that I had duplicates of, and wrote descriptions of each one and prices, something I found a few years ago in my parents' house when I was cleaning it out. So I think that was my first venture at catalog retailing. And then while still in high school, I started a company called Dynamo, MOW, which was a lawn mowing business. So those would be my first entrepreneurial efforts. And then the slip disc, Your Home for Vinyl and Chrome, was our college record store that I didn't start, but I did turn around from a money losing to a money making operation.
It should be noted. It should be noted that our payment for working there, as I was an employee there for a while, was albums. Right? We didn't get paid cash; got paid in music.
So that was one of the changes that I made. Is in the past, if you worked at the store, you got an employee discount, but you got nothing else. And strangely, what we found is at the end of the semester, when finals were rolling around, nobody would show up for work. So I created a policy that said, if you make all, but I think it's 2 or 3 shifts for the semester and don't miss 2 in a row, you get a free album at the end of the semester, which meant we were paying people the equivalent of about 30 cents an hour.
But I think you gave a choice of between the Bee Gees and a couple other randoms. Wasn't exactly your
No.
Rolling Stones.
It was album of your choice.
Okay. So from that point, though, you majored in poli-sci, correctly?
Yes.
And you ended up graduating Binghamton and going toward Wall Street. What made you kind of shift from majoring in poli-sci to a career on Wall Street, or at least right after graduation?
So my dream was to start my own record label, and I applied uh, in college, or pretty much when I was getting out of college, to maybe 15 different record labels and got rejected by all of them. And I was too idealistic slash naive to use any connections that I had. I actually had a high school friend whose dad was a label exec, and I thought it was immoral to use connections. I've long since learned that who you know gets you in the door, what you know gets you ahead, but didn't know that at the time. And so that was my main focus. My secondary focus was potentially working for the CIA, and I wanted to be a rebel in the ranks. My view was the U.S. foreign policy was pretty ill-advised, and that we should be less worried about capitalism and more worried about popularly elected governments. And so I interviewed with the CIA. they wanted, they were interested in my following up with them, but I was living with my parents at the time, and my father was not a fan of the CIA, and he never gave me the letter asking me for the follow-up interview, which I learned only years later.
Interesting. Wow.
So then I'm gainfully unemployed. All my friends, including you, had jobs lined up during your senior year of college. My attitude was, I'm only a senior in college once. I don't want to spend my time looking for jobs. I want to run my record store, DJ on the radio station, and enjoy life, which I did. But then come graduation, I had this pit in my stomach because I didn't know what my future would bring, and started applying and getting rejected left and right. I had a high school friend who was a year older who worked as an assistant to a research analyst at a uh, at a Wall Street firm, and he had been encouraging me to work on Wall Street, told me it's a great career. My response was, Wall Street's a bunch of blood-sucking parasites. You won't catch me dead on Wall Street. Well, fast forward 9 months, living with mom and dad, hating life. I put my tail between my leg, called my friend Mark up and said, Hey, Mark, tell me again about these Wall Street jobs. And he ended up sort of showing me the ropes. I somewhat snuck into Columbia University's business library and went through a book called Nelson's Directory of Wall Street Research, because this was before the internet, and wrote to every head of research on Wall Street and ended up getting hired by the retail analyst at First Boston, which is now Credit Suisse First Boston. And that was the beginning of my Wall Street career.
I mean, Dave, in research, you basically had to interrogate and ask a lot of questions to senior levels at publicly held companies. So I'd say your skill set really, being in research and writing reports and analyzing financials was pretty good training for Wall Street, correct? I mean,
Yes. And at the same time, I think what helped me a lot was that I was always, and I think I still am, an independent thinker. I was never one to follow the crowd. And I would do, as a research analyst, I would do a lot of independent research. So I would go out, visit stores, talk to customers, do pricing studies, talk to privately held competitors, talk to journalists, reporters. So I would try to come up with an independent point of view, whereas a lot of research analysts were, in some cases, mouthpieces for management.
so you worked your way up, then you ended up at Goldman Sachs. And I know you worked retail at Goldman Sachs, and then you were rated by Institutional Investor as one of the top analysts in retail. So you've pretty much worked your way up to this top of kind of the research piece, right? And at what point kind of did you realize that this wasn't really for you long term?
The first day of the job. So it was never my dream to work on Wall Street. I had paid for college through my Dynamo lawn mowing business and um, taking out student loans. And my thinking was I'd work as a research assistant for a year or two, pay off my loans, and then start my business, whatever that business would be. And the opportunity with Goldman Sachs came by accident in that my primary competitor at Goldman Sachs was somebody that I was friendly with. And unbeknownst to me, he was planning to leave research and go into investment banking. Goldman didn't want to allow him to switch departments, and First Boston tried to recruit him away. They knew that I was friends with him, so they said, Hey, Dave, give Gary a call and tell him why he should come join First Boston and work in investment banking. You guys will be a great team together. So I called Gary up and said, Gary, I hear you're thinking about leaving research. I was happy to lose him as a competitor and try to get him to join. Weeks go by, he doesn't join. And so I give him a call. I say, "Hey, Gary, what happened?" And he said, "Oh, I'm moving to banking." When Goldman heard I might leave and go to First Boston, all of a sudden they were willing to let me transfer departments. And now we've got a research department position open in retail. Dave, do you know anyone? Hint,
Timing is
hint,
everything.
hint, hint. So that really forced me to do a gut check because now thinking I would just do this for a couple of years, pay off the loans, and then start my business. Now I'm changing firms, have to make a whole new reputation, start from scratch. And that was one of the toughest decisions I've had to make in my career. And I came away with a good insight, which is in life, we don't make the right or wrong decisions. We make decisions and we make them right. And what I mean by that is it's not whether you go left or you go right that's most important. It's once you make that choice, it's how you
Yeah.
travel.
And how you make it
And
work. Yeah.
um, I agonized over that decision. And then finally, and honestly almost got fired from Goldman Sachs because my heart wasn't really in it. And it was my what was it? My last day at First Boston was Black Monday when October 19th, I believe it was 1987, stock market went down 25%.
Yep.
So it was a tumultuous time to be starting a new job, but I managed to figure it out and make it work.
Because it was you left and started Uncommon Goods in the year 2000, correct?
99.
99. And that was right around the time Goldman was going public, correct?
That is correct. Yes.
So that would have been financially rewarding to you to stay on at Goldman, I imagine, than
Yes.
going IPO. So you made the decision to not take the short-term financial potential gain and really go after what you thought may be really entrepreneurial and really much more satisfying for you.
Yes. I knew I did not do it for the money. Basically, I had what's known as golden handcuffs. I was a managing director at Goldman in 1999. Had I stayed for 4 years, I would have had millions and millions of dollars worth of stock. And I walked away from 90% of that because I felt that it was a couple reasons. One was things were changing so quickly with the internet. I had spent, I think at that point, 3 years researching it and was convinced it was a huge opportunity. Number one. Number two, at least as important, if not more important, my wife and I were trying to start a family, and CEOs who, the president of AutoZone was somebody that I was close with, and he advised me that once my wife and I had kids, that my appetite for risk was going to plunge, and that if this was something I wanted to do, better to do before we started a family.
That's pretty common advice. And I think it's kind of interesting, though, that you decided to take the risk of starting Uncommon Goods at a point when the kids were either very small or maybe just had one at the time. But I think,
No, I had no kids at the time,
oh, okay, right. Okay.
and this was the last report that I worked on. It was a research report about internet retailing. Uh, most of the
What
prediction,
year was that?
it was June 1st, 1999. And it said, ready or not, here it comes. Internet could ultimately capture 15 to 20% of the global retail market, which is about where it is 26 years later.
Well, there was a little bit of a crash a year after that, though.
Yeah.
A little
Bump, a
bit.
bump, a bump in the road.
A bump in the road. So tell us a little bit about kind of the transition out of Goldman Sachs and making the move to start a new retail company from scratch. uh, with outside investors gathering assets and money to start the company, and the risk involved there, knowing that you could, high risk of failure, right? I mean, like anybody starting a business like that, the risk of failure is very high, and you've grown this to be a hugely successful company. But at the time you made that decision, tell us a little bit about what was going through your head and
Sure. So, this is something I had been thinking about for probably close to 20 years. I was 36 at the time. Since I was a teenager, I had this dream of starting my own business. And you keep deferring a dream, and it's going to sound a little corny, but a part of you dies, I would say, the longer you don't pursue a dream. And then when I started pursuing it, it didn't feel real. And I remember feeling like I was a poser. I was an actor. I was a research analyst pretending to be an entrepreneur.
right.
Um, and honestly, it was only maybe a year and a half to 2 years later when everything went wrong in the business, and I had to make really tough decisions related to laying off people at the company that it started to feel all too real. But initially, I started the business with entirely my own money. Mm. Um, I told my assistant at Goldman that I was leaving, and I said, "Hey, Matt, here's an amazing opportunity for you. I'll recommend you to take over the stocks that I follow, and I think there's a good chance you could have them." And when he heard what I was doing, he said, "Hell no, I want to come with you." So he joined me, and then we hired a chief technology officer, and we hired sort of a general manager for the website. And I called the three of them co-founders. I gave each of them a loan so that they could buy stock at founding level price. And we didn't raise money for about 5 months and worked to organize the business, started to do some hiring. And back then, the internet was similar to AI today. It was the hottest thing since sliced bread, going to take over the world in 15 minutes flat. And so I had a conga line of people looking to invest. Um, and that was, in some ways, a great position to be in other ways, not a great position to be in. But because of the role that I had, the president of AutoZone invested, the chairman of AutoZone invested, the founder and CEO of Staples invested in the company. The late Peter Jennings, through our general manager, who knew him through her work at ABC, was an investor. Some of my former colleagues and
And even college friends. Sure.
and Jerry Spitzer, by far our largest investor, tongue in cheek.
And that is
But
sarcasm.
yeah, it was basically lots of people wanted to invest. And so we raised a few $1 million in November of 99, was kind of off to the races. And then 2 months later, 3 months later, our son was born. Our first son was born. And right around that time, the internet bubble burst and the funding environment dried up. And I was scheduled to go out to Silicon Valley uh, to try to raise money for the business. And the same AutoZone president who had advised me to start the business before having kids also advised me not to miss our son's birth, no matter what. And so I
Good
delayed it.
advice. Good advice.
I I delayed it from January, a few weeks before my wife's due date, to March or so, 30 days after he was born. And at that point, the internet bubble had burst. There was no funding to be had, and every venture capitalist that I met with uh, was telling me, "Oh, you should really consider business to business companies. B2C is dead. You really need to pivot to B2B. And I said, I've spent my career in retail. This is what I understand. I believe in this concept. I'm not going to change the business model just to get your money. And so we did not get any venture capital, went back to our original investors and raised another round in June of 2000. But basically, the message I got loud and clear is we're, in a sense, giving you this money with your tin cup out, but don't come back to us again unless and until the business is making money. And
Right.
so,
Hey, Dave, for our listeners, why don't you take a step back and just tell a little bit about what your vision with Uncommon Goods was and is today, and kind of what you're trying to accomplish there, where you see your place in the marketplace, because you've grown, you advertise. I'm sure many of our listeners know who Uncommon Goods is, but maybe just take a quick step back.
sure. So basically, my idea was to come up with an online business that doesn't exist in the physical world. Okay. And would be able to leverage the internet to really create something genuinely new for shoppers. And somewhat by accident, I ended up at a craft show in Washington, D.C., sponsored by the Smithsonian Museum. And the first thing I always looked for as a retail analyst is customers. And this craft show, which was largely handmade objects, some accessories like scarves, socks, hand knit objects like that, glass vases, handmade furniture. Um, so these vendors were traveling from all over the country, some as far away as California, for this April 1999 Smithsonian Craft Show. The place was packed, jam-packed with customers. And the first thing I did was talk to these customers, ask them, why are you shopping here? And what I heard was many of the people, excuse me, were looking for something different, something that spoke to their individuality if they were shopping for themselves, or if I'm buying my friend Jerry a gift, I don't want him to feel like I just went to some mall chain store and bought the easiest thing to buy off the shelf, but I actually went the extra mile. I know what makes him tick. I know what's going to make him happy. And I went and found this product with a story behind it that's really special. And so that was the insight for the shopper. And then for the maker or the vendor, they're having to pay to ship themselves and their merchandise to these craft shows. Whatever doesn't sell, they've got to ship back. And these shows are invariably on the weekends. And they've got, if they've got a family or they've got an active social life, it's interrupted by these shows. And they've got to do lots of these shows. They may love making product, but now they've got to be involved in the sale of the product. So I thought this is a really inefficient market. And God forbid, Jerry, uh, I buy you some product that's a Giants product instead of a Jets product, and you want to return it. The circus has left town. You're not going to be able to find that artisan who's going to exchange the product. So the idea was essentially Uncommon Goods could buy these products from the artists, let them focus on what they do best, being makers, and then also um, we would create the equivalent of eBay where we would have other products that would be what we were calling artisan direct. So I had the idea for Etsy as well as Uncommon Goods back in 1999. I had actually, when I was at Goldman Sachs, worked on eBay's initial public offering. So I saw the value in that so-called peer-to-peer network.
But Dave, Etsy's model, you inventory your product and ship out of Brooklyn and possibly other warehouses as well. But Etsy basically doesn't warehouse product; they ship direct the vendor will ship directly from their spot to the consumer, correct?
That is correct. That was the Etsy model was part of the original Uncommon Goods idea. But back in 1999, not many makers had digital cameras. It was, they came along, Etsy came along, I think it was around 2003, and the world had changed a lot in those 4 years.
So how do you go about, like, what's your philosophy on selecting product and merchandising and choosing unique products for uncommon goods that obviously you can't find elsewhere? That's what you're trying to do, right?
Yeah, so we go to craft shows, we go to trade shows, we'll go around the country, we'll go around the world to find these products. We also have, now that we're better known, we have lots of artists submitting products to us, and then we have an in-house design team where we'll actually make. Uh, right now, we manufacture here in Brooklyn at our offices here. We manufacture 5% of what we sell is made here in Brooklyn, and about 20% of what we sell we design and develop in-house.
Do you think that will increase over time, or do you think that's pretty steady number? Is it more profitable to design and sell your own versus resell?
So there used to be a electronics retailer in New York called Trader Horn, and one of their ad slogans was, "We believe in quick nickels over slow dollars." Ultimately, you got to add either your quick nickels or your slow dollars up and figure out which number is greater. It's ultimately your gross profit, not your profit margin, that matters most. So, all things being equal, including revenue, it is a lot more profitable to develop in-house. However, we don't have a monopoly on the great ideas, and we want to support our artists and makers. We mention their names in our print catalog and online, and so it's really a mix. You know, our so-called product development, our in-house development, which is now close to 20% of the business, was nothing 15 years ago, and so that's been growing fairly steadily. And I think that could be 30% of the business, if not more, in the coming years. Overall, exclusive product is a bit north of 40%. So 20% we develop in-house, 20% we work with makers and get an exclusive agreement on their product for a period of time. And that number, that overall exclusive number, has been growing because we put out this print catalog. Customer goes through the catalog, she sees something she likes. What do you think the first thing she does is?
Go to the website.
I wish. She goes on Amazon and says, "Oh, let me see if I can get this cheaper, free shipping, and maybe I can get it tomorrow." And so we want the customer who goes to Amazon to be sorely disappointed that she can't find it there and comes to our website and buys it from us.
So I'm sure you have a lot of repeat customers over the 25 years that Uncommon Goods has been around, and I'm sure you're looking for new customers as well, right? So you're always trying to market to new customers.
Yes.
Are you using AI yet? And in what ways do you see possibly how that could be used to help you?
Yeah, so we've been using AI for about 6 years. Um, and I can't take credit for it. I was actually uh, somewhat resistant to it. But our COO at the time said, "Dave, we really should use," the company was called Forethought. "We really should use this company Forethought's technology to be able to provide automated answers to frequently asked questions." So for customer service. And I was resistant to it because just like I hate automated phone attendants and you have to press 10 different buttons, I was skeptical that this would really be a service to the customer and we'd essentially be putting the monkey on the customer's back who had to jump through all these hoops to get the answer that she wanted rather than talking to a human being or getting a direct email response. But what I found is that we could train the models really well, watch our responses like a hawk, get customers to rate the feedback, and be able to provide much better uh, uh, responses and faster than we would be able to do with a human being. So we've been using AI in customer service for, as I said, 6, 7 years now, and continue to find new use cases for it there. So-called agentic AI, that's more kind of reactive. More agentic or creative AI, we're using, our software developers are now using it in coding. According to our CTO, we're reducing our computer programmers' workload by about 25% because of their ability to leverage AI in coding, and I would imagine that's only going to increase over time. Copywriting, we feed our thousands of product descriptions into this engine that we built that understands the voice we want to use in describing our product, and then share a bunch of facts about a new product and tell the tool to write a product description. We will
Hmm.
still have a copywriter edit it, tweak it, but it can save a lot of time. With photography, if we want to change backgrounds, we can now use tools like Midjourney and others to change a background rather than having to shoot a product all over again. We're also working on it for new product ideas. Hey, these products have worked really well. What items might you suggest that we make? So
So do you
lots,
think
lots of.
ultimately it saves you in some labor costs and the amount of I don't know how many employees you have today, and I know it changes seasonally.
So my hope is that it enables our team to do more creative, more productive things and allows the company to grow because we can use this tool more effectively, not that it reduces the size of our team. So I would say it reduces the amount of hours that we spend on routine work. And then the challenge for us and our team members is to find productive use for the time that has been freed up. The way I look at AI is if you're standing at the ocean and you're wading into the water and there are waves coming, you can either stand there like a bowling pin and get knocked over by the wave, or break through the wave and ride the next wave in. And that's what we're trying to do.
Take a little bit of the aggressive approach, which is
Yes.
probably a necessity at this point. So Dave, in growing this company from scratch, you are the leader, you're the CEO, you're the boss. What leadership mistakes or mistake did you make that you've kind of learned from the most over that period of
How,
25
how many
years?
how many hours do we have?
Only two more,
Um,
or something that stands out.
so I would say there were two mistakes that jump out at me. One is when you're a research analyst on Wall Street, every CEO is selling you. And when I say selling you, meaning they're telling you why you should tell investors to buy their stock. And so I would say growing up in New York City and then the New York metro area, uh, and with the family that I had, I was naturally a skeptical person. 14 years on Wall Street turned that skeptic into something of a cynic. Okay. And what I realized is that trait, which was very effective for not being fooled by overly optimistic CEOs, was not an effective leadership trait. And so somebody would present something to me that they were excited about, and I would quickly point out to them what's wrong with it, which was demoralizing. And so I had to change my mindset from being a critic to being a collaborator and being more positive and more supportive. So I would say that was one change that I had to make. The other big mistake that almost destroyed the business was trying to keep up with other startups who were raising way more money than we were. There was a company called Eziba, EZIBA, which raised $60 million, 10 times, if not more, than what we raised. And Red Envelope was another company that was hot at one point, went public. And in our early days, I felt the pressure to try to offer customers the same features and everything that they had. And we spent more money than we had, and I almost bankrupted the business. Took me 6 years before I earned my first salary. Took the business 4 years to make a profit. So I would say those were two of the bigger mistakes I made.
Sounds like you've learned from them and you've grown since then, so it's all worked out.
Yep.
Where do you see the biggest opportunities in retail in the next few years?
Um, I still think the biggest opportunities are online. Um, I mean, I think there are still big opportunities in the stores. And I think experience, I mean, there are many things you can do in the physical world that you cannot do in the virtual world. And if I were a store-based retailer, and we actually have two pop-up stores this holiday season, but if I were a store-based retailer, I'd be very focused on accentuating the things that a physical experience can offer that a digital experience cannot. Um, so, um, but in general, I think the convenience of online retailing is tough to beat, and the assortment that you can offer is also tough to beat. I do think personalization, custom products, which have seen rapid growth, I think that that will continue to be important. And I think having differentiated product in the world of Amazon is going to be increasingly important. And I think that argues well for the way that we're positioned.
I mean, Dave, I've talked to at times about the challenge of shipping and dealing with the FedExes and UPSs of the world. I mean, is that an issue for you going forward, or is that something that it just the cost is part of the transaction? The consumer is going to have to pay for shipping, and they're not going to a store, and they have to deal with the convenience and pay for it. Because I know that at one point it was an issue for you negotiating contracts with with shipping, but has that gotten better?
It has only gotten worse. Customers, I mean, Amazon is our number one, number two, and number three competitor, and customers are trained by Amazon to expect free shipping, not thinking about the fact that we spend $150 a year for the privilege of free shipping for Amazon Prime. But customers do not want to pay for shipping and, in general, feel like it's our right to get free shipping. That's something we've really wrestled with as a business because our shipping cost each year is greater than our annual profit. And so I've been reluctant to offer free shipping, but 7 years ago, we launched something called Uncommon Perks, which is our version of Amazon Prime, where instead of spending $150 for it, you only have to spend $15 and you get free shipping.
Well,
For
I don't think I've taken advantage of that yet.
Yeah, and you get two $5 uh, coupons. And so it really is a net cost of $5 if you make two purchases and you're getting free shipping. So you're coming out ahead if you buy from us twice over the course.
As long as I don't have to wait a month to get my product, that sounds like a good deal.
Yeah, so it's, to the New York metro area, it's usually a day, maybe 2 days. California can take as long as 5 days for our perks shipping. So we don't have 100 warehouses around the country the way Amazon does. We have one here in Brooklyn, and then we work with a third-party warehouse in Indiana with some of our best sellers. So
Yeah, go ahead.
no, after you.
So putting on your Wall Street hat for just a second to kind of sum up where you stand today, if you had to rate uncommon goods today as a buy, hold, or sell, how would you rate yourself? Somewhat honestly, and why?
You know, I'm not going to disclose on the podcast where our share price is valued, but as a research analyst, you know, is a stock a buy depends on what the price is. I mean, it depends on two things. Number one, future prospect for the company, and number two, what are you paying for uh, that stock? And so I think our stock is attractively priced, and I don't think it fully reflects the bright prospects of the company. Also, I will tell you, actions speak louder than words. So I have not sold one share of Uncommon Good stock, even though I'm the majority owner, and our company has been buying back stock from investors. So I both, uh, with my words and our actions, we are a buyer of the stock.
That seems fair. Dave, I know you're very charitable. You always have been. Um, Tell me a little bit about your Better to Give program and how that helps others.
Sure. But before I do, I will say that as important as Better to Give is to me, even more important is how we treat our workers. And so, I'm a fourth generation New Yorker. Our sons are fifth generation New Yorkers. And I've wanted to build the business here in New York, which, as you can imagine, from both a real estate and labor perspective, much more expensive. And we pay our lowest paid seasonal warehouse worker a minimum wage of $21 an hour. And people who are year-round workers earn considerably more. We also offer a generous paid family leave policy. And so when you mention, being charitable, to me, I don't like the word charity. It has a negative connotation. It is the most commonly used word. But to me, allowing people to earn a living wage or close to a living wage and have that dignity is most important. So we've actually gotten, and I've personally gotten very involved in helping pass two laws in New York State, one raising the minimum wage, and as important, indexing it to inflation, so taking it out of
Hmm.
politicians' hands. And number two, something called paid family leave, where federal government says, hey, you're entitled through the Family Medical Leave Act, FMLA. If you work at a company of more than 50 people, you're entitled to time off. Your job's protected if you have a baby or a sick parent. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't guarantee you any money. And the lowest income workers can't afford that benefit because they can't afford to not bring in any income for 12 weeks. So we helped get a law passed in New York that actually pays people uh, to care for a sick relative or care for a newborn child. So anyhow,
That's
enough on
great.
my soapbox. You asked me about Better to Give, which I consider a lot less important. It's a marketing program. I do think it matters. We feature it in our print catalog. Um, we've donated over $3 million at checkout. We give customers a choice of a variety of nonprofits because we do print millions of these paper catalogs. We donate to a nonprofit called American Forests, $1 an order where the customer chooses American Forests. We also uh, donate to the International Rescue Committee and just added breastcancer.org, a breast cancer information site. And so customers choose one of those three nonprofits and we donate $1 to those nonprofits.
That's great. I imagine your feedback is probably pretty good on that when people can give feedback. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And you guys are a B Corp, correct?
Yes.
Do you want to tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about what that is, just
Sure.
briefly?
So when people talk about the bottom line in business, it's profit. And a B Corp says you should actually have a triple bottom line. There are two other P's that matter besides profit. Number one is your impact on people, and number two is your impact on the planet. And so, as a B Corp, and we're actually a founding B Corp, I got involved in the movement in 2006 before they were officially certifying B Corps. And there's a
Is
nonprofit.
B for Bolotsky or no?
Yeah.
Sorry.
But they there's a nonprofit called B Lab that certifies companies and actually audits us to make sure what we say is in fact true. What we say we claim we do is in fact true. And we're measured on a number of different criteria. And if we get a passing score, we then get to be a certified B Corp. Patagonia is the best known B Corp that's out there.
I don't know if there's many B Corps. Is it common to be a B Corp?
Or uncommon.
Uncommon?
So I would say that it is not common. I'm going to guess fewer than 1% of businesses out there are B Corp, but um, King Arthur Baking is a fellow B Corp. I mentioned Patagonia is probably the most famous.
Well, no, right. Great. So, Dave, when we start talking about starting the business, growing the business, you keep looking for more profitable ways to grow the business. We're getting to the age where you have to start thinking about exiting the business. And as you know, Questar Capital Partners is intimately involved with wealth management, asset management, and helping middle market companies come up with exit plans. So, in thinking through, I know no one, including you, wants to really think about their exit, but it is a reality. Growing a succession plan, having the right folks that you're grooming to ultimately succeed you. You know, what are your thoughts on where you stand now and kind of how you might want to exit? I know we've talked about employee ownership. You know, we're big on employee ownership as a potential exit. But I mean, what have you been thinking of lately?
Sure. And I would say it's actually not something that I don't want to think about. It's something that I think is important to think about, and increasingly I want to think about. I would also say there are two succession plans. There's the sudden death succession plan, which I'm embarrassed to admit until this week, I really hadn't focused on creating that. Dave riding his bike gets hit by a truck, what happens? And so I've been working on that sort of emergency contingency plan and should have something done in the next few weeks on that. But, more likely is a planned and hopefully a planned succession. And the answer is I don't know. I'm taking it one step at a time. As I mentioned, we have been buying back stock. The company's cash flow has been pretty positive, and so we've been buying back stock, and that may enable us, as you mentioned, to be 100% employee owned. I have not been taking money out of the business. We are an LLC, so we have made tax distributions, but other than that, I've not been taking money out of the business as the majority owner, and really live fairly modestly and don't need to. I'm most motivated by the business continuing to have a positive impact and our team members being able to financially share in the success of the business. And so an ESOP is something that could be attractive to us and something that we are thinking about, but want to um, get to a point where we've bought out the vast majority of our investors before we consider that. And I've also got to have a clear-eyed view of my succession plans, and I'd say that's still a work in progress, but it is something I'm definitely focused on.
That's great. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think it's something you should continually to consider. And sounds all reasonable, Dave. To on a lighter note, what is your favorite drink of choice? Because I have a feeling it's not bourbon. I've been drinking with you many over dinner many times, and bourbon has never come up. And I know bourbon's in the
So
title of this podcast, but I know you tend to like tequila. Am I correct?
my favorite drink of choice would be lemonade or fresh squeezed orange juice. If I could only have one thing to drink, it would be one of those two. Yeah, an alcoholic drink, uh, margarita. Yeah,
With or without salt?
100% with salt, but not too many of them. I've gotten myself in trouble having too many of margarita.
Yes, I've witnessed that myself. Yep. Well, Dave, thank you very much. This has been great, and I'm hoping that our listeners will really enjoy it and really take to it what you had to say about growing your business, because many people that listen to this really are trying to figure out both the growth aspect and the exit plot uh, part of this, and I think they will enjoy what you had to say. So, thank you very much for coming on today, and best of luck in the holiday season.
Jerry, thank you. You've been a great friend for coming up on 45 years and also a terrific advisor over the years. So thank you for both.
You are very welcome, and look forward to many years to come.